But while I'm doing that, I mean, introduce yourself.
Hello. My name is Pippindip. I am on the same Twitch team as River here. We're both part of VDreamers. And was given this opportunity to have an interview with them. They were reaching out and asking me if I'd be interested, and I definitely jumped on it because it sounded fun. I stream on twitch.tv/Pippindip, usually on Tuesdays, Wednesdays. I'm sorry, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Outside of that, I'm sure we'll get into a lot more of the specifics, but yeah, I think it's a good intro.
All right, so I mean, let's start off with the basic get to know you stuff. I mean, how'd you get into VTubing and why VTubing?
I got into VTubing. I was at first just kind of getting into streaming. For me, it's always been a hobby. I would love it to be more than that someday, but at the same time, like I have a career already and I'm working on it. So it was for me just a way to like blow off steam. The major reason I started was at the time I was playing a lot of FF14 and I was part of a raid group. It was actually my own raid group. And because of that, I had a very consistent gaming schedule. So I was like, if I'm already going to be gaming at these exact times, like every week, why don't I also just stream? I started out with like a PNG. I think a lot of YouTubers do. And while I was doing that, one of my absolute best friends, who's a really, really talented artist, made for me in secret my first model and has since like updated it, and it's really become something like super beautiful, and it was probably one of like the nicest things anybody's ever done for me. And I was from then on, I had a full model and just VTubed from there, and I've absolutely loved it. I kind of had a bit of a jump start in VTubing, or in streaming in general, because at the time I was the admin in Changed Game official Discord server, and because of that, I already had a lot of people with like eyes on me, and it was always nice because when I would go live, I'd be at the top of a server with 10,000 people in it, and they'd see that I was streaming, and I think that really helped with initial discoverability and. Plus, I was active there. I made a lot of friends there. I've since retired from the moderation team there, but it was definitely something I was like super invested in for years, and made a lot of really great friends, and it just kind of took off from there.
What were you moderating? What exactly?
Have you heard of the video game Changed by Dragon Snow?
I have not. That is very foreign to me. What kind of game is it?
So it is also what got me into the furry community. It is it's a furry not VR chat. It is a furry thing called RPG Maker. Furry RPG Maker game. Dragon Snow is a Chinese developer who made this game. I initially found it on YouTube by a YouTuber, Manly Badass Hero. He does a lot of that type of content. And not necessarily furry stuff, but like RPG Maker stuff and horror in particular. So it's a furry game about like these goo creatures, and it's very niche, but that's where I kind of first got into it, and became a part of that community. Hung out with a lot of cool people, got to know the actual server owner, and then became a mod, and then later became the first major admin there. Programmed the bot that they had. It's since been taken over by a much more talented developer than I ever was, but I got the bot up and running, and I really dedicated a lot of my free time and effort into that, and it paid off. It was also just fun to do.
I mean, as somebody who can barely do like a hello world command, I mean, any kind of coding's impressive to me, so I mean, that's good on ya.
It's what got me into Python. A lot of it at first was like script kiddieing, so I would go in and like look up like, hey, I want this feature, so let me look up like some GitHubs and look, see what this looks like. And then from there I joined a couple of programming specific discords, specifically Nextcord, which is a branch of Python programming for Discord, since the base one is discontinued, and it allowed me to like learn from people who are a lot smarter than me. I haven't kept up with it, but it's something that, if you were to sit me down and say, like, I want a bot that does this, I could probably make it, but it wouldn't be good. But it would work.
You mentioned before that you're also focusing on a regular on a. I don't want to say regular because I hate differentiate when people are like, oh, content creation isn't a career. When I think it
Yeah.
is, it's no different than like a stand-up comedian or a late-night host or an actor. In my opinion, it's just a different way. But you said you had another career path that you want to do. Does that have something to do with coding, or is it a different sort of line?
It is IT, but it's definitely not the coding side. I've never really been like smart enough to be a coder. I'm an IT manager at a trade school, so that's always been kind of what I was doing. When I first got started in streaming, I was the IT help desk at a warehouse, and then I've moved up from there. I've always been interested in computers and working with computers, specifically like hardware, less so software.
So I see you have a bit of a program knowledge, and I mean, right now, well, actually, a couple things before I get into this discussion. This show is going to be called Real Talk with River because I think there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and I want to both get to know people on a personal level, but also talk about real issues that I think they might have expertise in, or at least just an opinion. Everybody deserves to have their opinion heard. For the most part, some people, I think, their opinions are dangerous and they should be seeking mental health help. I should know many of them walk into my store and they ask for a Robert F. Kennedy book. So if you are not okay with political content, I did put the tag here, but we might get into serious topics. Sometimes they might be just joking topics. Who knows? I want this to be pure chaos because I don't like a traditional podcast format. I don't know how I'm going to create it pure chaos down the road, but for right now, it's just going with the flow of the conversation or whatever pops into my tiny little peanut brain, or my guest peanut brain or big brain. I think you probably have a very big brain if you're doing IT, considering again, I can barely write a usable code.
I mean, same. Like I did a lot of like a lot of what I'm definitely not. I would not consider myself by any means to be a coder. I'm able to like Google things well. I guess I got that from working in IT, and then I can like look at something that works and then backtrace it and kind of learn by reading it and looking at it. But if you like sat me down without internet access and said program a bot to do literally anything, I would crumble and die into small dust particles. The only programming language I would say I'm good at would be TI Basic, the programming language on the TI-84 calculator. I used to in school I would write programs to solve math problems for me in my calculator and then just use those instead of actually doing the math, which was really nice. But certainly that doesn't like translate to like any actual like coding or programming language, but super basic when it comes to that.
I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, based on every programmer, coder, IT person, computer person I've ever met, my brother included, who headed the IT department of 2 universities. Trust me, what you described, the Googling and stuff, and that is literally what they all say. They're like, oh, I'm not a good coder, I just Google half the shit and then copy paste it.
There's like so many smart people out there. Like, it's so nice having like just the internet as a thing that exists to like look stuff up. I'm worried about it though, because obviously that used to be better in the past than it is now.
Yeah, I mean, now it's that. I mean, that's what I kind of wanted to get into is the AI slop that's like ridding the internet, and the fact is that so many people are relying on it. And I kind of want your opinion because I think most of the people I know, whether a lot of people that I have talked to, tend to have the same opinions about AI, and mostly Gen AI. And I have my own opinions that I've expressed. I'm a big fan of Neuro-sama, and I think AI could be a good tool in a regards, but I also think it is very dangerous, and I think that in the hands of the oligarchs that be, it is not good. So I want to hear your opinion, your thoughts, any insight that you might have.
I genuinely think that the use case for a system is what it produces. And AI to date has produced absolutely nothing of any quality or value whatsoever to any normal person, period. It has made the internet a worse place. It has obfuscated social media. it has killed so many like resource finding, so many like used to be good websites that were already being killed by the algorithm. But now they're being killed even more by AI. Now, if you reply to somebody on Twitter, there's like a greater than 30 or 40% chance that you're just replying to a bot that's just trying to get a rise out of you. And the problem is that these things are monetized by the powers that be. So no matter what, it's just negative. I would venture and to say there is absolutely zero positive use case for AI. Period. Full stop. Even with like entertainers, like I know Doug uses AI. Like you mentioned Gen-sama. I actually didn't know about them until I saw them recently on a Doug video, and I thought it was interesting and cool. But you know, if you want to be an interesting and cool streamer, do it. You know, like if you're using AI to do it, then you're not interesting or cool. You're just not. There's no, in my opinion, there is no moral way to utilize AI in any form. We're talking generative AI here. I do think it is being used by the powers that be to do great harm and to do a lot of evil. One of the major examples of that comes off the top of my head of the evil that AI can be used for is during the Israel-Palestine conflict that's still ongoing, hopefully is ending now. AI was used by targeting systems, and because of that, it killed innocent people. And people in power were able to look back at it and say, "Oh, but we didn't do it; the AI did." Or denying healthcare that we're learning about with the United Healthcare situation, where AI was used to decline healthcare on like massive scales. It is purely being used for evil. There is no positive, progressive use case for generative AI, and there never has been.
So, what do you know about Neuro-sama in
I've
general?
seen the only thing I've seen is their GeoGuessr video with Doug, which again I thought was funny. I thought it was good content. It was interesting. I watched the video, but like outside of that, not much because I literally just it doesn't interest me very much.
I agree with you for the most part. Let me just say off the bat, I think like I said, I do think that it's being used in a lot of evil ways. You know, generative images, videos, music, all of that is just stealing other people's work, putting it together. The only reason why I am like, I don't want to say I'm a staunch defender of like Neuro-sama or anything. Just from everything I know from being in the community for like the past year and a half ish, is the guy who does it, he doesn't want the spotlight on him. It basically was his passion project that he's made into. It's basically created its own universe. Other streamers interact with Neuro-sama and Evil Neuro, but the guy does have an interesting personality on his own. He just doesn't like being the focal point, and that's kind of like what's interesting about him. And maybe I'll eat these words in a year or something, but it is the only AI like content creator that I've seen that is not trying to actively replace them. Every other AI content creator, I don't know if you've seen like the ones that have appeared on like, you know, meta platforms or whatever, or like TikTok, where it's basically just some AI generated person with AI generated text. They're trying to replace them. Well, Neuro-sama is just a community around this project that interacts with other VTubers and has helped like boost some other VTubers up too, who were a little less known, and started working with them. I do agree with you when you say that like with the Israel-Palestine conflict, there is a lot of danger in AI, and I mean a lot of what I know is, you know, I'm very sci-fi brained, so you know I always think, well, you know, Skynet's coming, so it is not good. I don't think that development of anything regarding weapons is good and should be, you know, celebrated.
Again, I think that's totally fair, and I'm also not one who's going to say like, "Oh, how dare you like this thing that I don't like?" Like, you know, everybody is going to do their own thing. They're going to enjoy their own content. When I look at AI, you brought up an interesting part of it. You brought up the stealing, the stealing that the AI does, where it like, will scrape information and everything. I was at a convention not too long ago, and I was talking to my parents actually came with me, which was awesome. And I was talking about how much like a lot of the artists in like the artist alley we were in all are like super staunchly AI. And I actually had some guy overhear me, and he came up to me and was like, "Hey, I'm an artist, but what I do is I have an AI model that I have trained off of just my art, and I am very upfront about it. And I'm like, people can use that to commission me, and they get like a cheaper thing, and it's my own art, and it's only being fed by my art, and blah 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 blah, right?" And I thought about it for a minute, and I said, I'll be blunt with you. When I pay for art, part of what I'm paying for is your time, your energy, your creativity, and your suffering. I'm not paying for it in the moment. I'm not paying for it in the past. I'm paying for it in the moment. So I would never commission somebody like that. Because, to put it bluntly, if I then wanted to get an art piece, and this is your business model, I, as somebody who has no artistic ability, I bet, give me a week, I will make a better piece of your AI art than you could. And I think Neuro-sama is something that's a little bit more complex than this, for example. But it's also one of those things where it's like, I think anybody could sit down and, if they were really dedicated, make a better Neuro-sama than Neuro-sama. And because of that, I see it as a significantly lesser form of art. Entertainment is art. It is part of the blood, the sweat, the tears, and the soul. And I think it's great that this was his passion project, and that's awesome. And him as a person, he seemed really interesting. Like when I watched the video, a lot of the content that I really enjoyed was him, and he's good at it. He's a good entertainer. Now he goes into it and says, "I don't want to be an entertainer. I don't want to be up front," and that's fair. You can have your own reasons for whatever you want to do. So you ain't gonna justify anything to anybody. But I would almost say that the AI aspect of his stream cheapens and lessens his art. And I can't see past that.
And you know that's fair, and I totally understand. And yeah, no, like you said, I'm never really gonna attack you for that opinion either, because I feel like there has been an attack on us as creators. I'm a writer. I don't consider myself a very good one. I haven't published anything, so I don't really have to worry about any of my stuff really being fed into an AI, unless, of course, my old ex tweets or whatever. But honestly, at this point, my data's out there. Personally, I'm just sort of, what's the word? What's the word when, like, it's not that you don't care, it's just that you're too tired to care? Something like that.
Overwhelmed would be one way to say it. I think I get what you're saying. That's not quite the right word. I understand the vibe you're pushing for.
But I know that, like, if I eventually do publish a book, I'm not going to want it anywhere near an AI model, and I'm going to make sure that whoever my publisher is, I'm going to make sure I've read over the contracts, and I tell the agent and the publisher, like, hey, I do not give my permission or my consent for my work to be used to train any AI model. If you allow it to, I will take my business elsewhere, And that's one of the things that bothers me too, is it's like, so I'm a wrestling fan, and there's a promo, which is when, the wrestler talks to the camera and they give a speech or whatever, by a very famous wrestler named Dusty Rhodes. And in it, he talks about hard times and how, and one of the lines is, give a man a watch after 30 years and say, you just lost your job to a computer. It's the same discussion we've been having for decades about losing our jobs, losing, everything. We can't really blame, like, the IT people, the people who develop these robots. It's these companies that are buying them up and saying, well, we can cut down on the workforce and, automate everything. And now we're seeing it in the humanities, which is something we always sort of saw as us, and now the computers are trying to take that away from us too.
Well, I genuinely think they will never succeed at that. I think the reason why we're even having this conversation is because billions upon billions upon billions of dollars have been pumped into AI. There are people rich, wealthy, powerful people who have invested so much to shove this down our throats, everywhere we turn, every new product, every service, every website, every cookbook, everything. And genuinely, like, as somebody who's pretty big, or not big part of, but who's really into the furry community, which is a very artistic community, it is genuinely hated by the people, by the boots on the ground. Genuinely, like, despised at almost every level. It will never catch on. There is more money invested into it now than it will ever make. And eventually it'll go the same way as the metaverse, the same way as NFTs, the same way as cryptocurrency. It will pop. And when it does, it'll move on to some other horrible Machiavellian monstrosity nightmare, and that'll be the next one. But I genuinely think in its current state, the generative AI we have now is a fad. It's already hated and despised by the majority of people, and especially people who it's being like marketed towards. Like, if you have a tool and you're like, this tool makes art, and then that art is a soulless monstrosity, art, people who consume art don't want that. Like, they just that's literally like the opposite of what they want. It does not spark joy. So it's like it will fail. It's just a matter of time.
So when did you realize you were a furry?
I've kind of been adjacent to the community for a long time, but it was definitely the Bentley Badass Hero video from Change that got me to like join my first like community that was on that side. It's something I didn't get into until pretty late in life. I want to say I was like 24, 25, but whenever I really kind of like dived into it. And I'm glad I did. A lot of the best people in my life who I've met through that community. My partner I've met through that community. My best friends I've met through that community. So it's absolutely something that I treasure dearly. I am genuinely glad I got into it later in life. I know some people who get into it really early because it does have, in some ways, some like negative connotations to it, especially for like younger people. So I'm glad that I, avoided it. That being said, now it's like, as an adult, it's awesome. It's great. It's fun. I go to all sorts of conventions. I was actually just at one last weekend. And I was also at one in the beginning of December, and I'm going to one in April, and I'm going to one in August. And I have my own suit, and it's a lot of fun. I absolutely adore it. And I adore the creativity, the freedom, the expression, the community, and the safe space that it provides, especially at a time where I think that's like really needed by a lot of people. I've been to anime conventions, I've been to Comic-Cons, I've been to all sorts of like littler gatherings, littler conventions and such. The energy is just different, man. It's so different at Furrycons. It's so accepting, loving, hyper, energetic. It's something I would never. I will probably be doing it for like the rest of my life.
I get what you're saying. I mean, I'm kind of a furry. I'm open about it. I just don't like do the fursona stuff. Mostly because I just can't see myself as like any kind of animal. But I've been friends with furries for years. I was friends with the kid who would wear a tail to school. It was one of my best friends in high school.
That's crazy. I would never. Now to a con, sure, but to school, no.
Yeah, my school was like, no, I was bullied more than him. He was a great guy. I actually saw him the other day. Very nice guy. I was bullied because of the undiagnosed autism, but I digress. I haven't been to cons in a while. Have you ever thought about like the smell of conventions? How every type of convention every convention has like a distinct smell to it.
Less so. What do you mean?
I know some people say like the body odor thing or whatever, and it's kind of like that. But when like you're in a convention hall, it's harder to detect unless you're like really up close to someone in like the artist alley. But every convention kind of has like that certain smell that's like a mix of the area that it's in and like the ratio of body odor, and then like there's always like that kind of like smell of like plastic from like the cosplays, because a lot of people, hand make them and stuff like that, and people put paint on.
So there's definitely like a stereotype for a lot of like furry conventions being a bit like stinkier, and I understand that that is something that like you got to remember, when you're wearing around like 40 pounds of cloth and heavy duty winter fur and blah blah blah, right? You're gonna get sweaty, but a lot of people like take really good care of their costumes and of their suits, and have taken like a lot of precautions to try to keep that to an absolute minimum, from like wearing really nice Under Armour to like cooling wick clothing, to just having good hygiene. So I'm very lucky in that it's only been like once or twice that I've really like in like a crowded hallway or something, I've really gotten like the whiff. For the most part, it's not actually that bad. I can't really think about like plastic smell. I don't think that's as common at furry conventions than it would be at other ones, because a lot of the stuff is fabric. It's not as much plastic. Like fabric and foam.
Yeah, I think the like worst smells usually come off of the guys, like the dudes who this is like their only time they've left their house. Usually they're Yu-Gi-Oh players. I should know. I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm interested. How do you like take care of a fursuit? Do you like dry clean it? Do you spot clean that? Do you like condition it to like make it look nice? Tell me more.
Depends on how much you've worn it for like the weekend. It's pretty typical to, after like a full weekend of wearing it, you just throw that thing in the tub, let it soak, clean it up that way. Use like a light soap. Regular soap works. If you don't have that, like very light dish detergent will work as well. But you just wash it like you would anything else. But usually you do wash it by hand. You got to be mindful if you have like a different materials in your suit, like you have plastic. And drying it's really important. You're gonna get like a mildewy smell. A lot of people use special like 3D printed coat hangers that have like fans built into it. The same kind of stuff you'd see for drying out like a wetsuit. But for the most part, it's actually very easy to take care of it. And then other than that, you just brush it. Make sure you brush it carefully. There's like certain brushes you should use. I don't know the name of it. I have one because it came with mine, thankfully, because I'm stupid. But you brush it out, and you got to be careful when you brush it, because like, when you use like a brush on like a real like animal, any hair that you end up pulling out is going to just regrow, but it's not going to happen on a suit. So you want to be more delicate with it. But for the most part, it's just kind of standard cleaning stuff. You don't need to get it dry cleaned or anything. I suppose you could if you like really wanted to like be really careful with it. But most people just chuck it in the bathtub. It's actually pretty common after conventions, if you're like looking on like Twitter or Blue Sky or something, you'll see pictures like, I got the stinky boy, and it'll be like just a picture of the fursuit in a bathtub filled with water, and they're just cleaning it. So you see that quite a bit, actually. People like make fun about it and have a good time with it. But it is definitely something that like people who are serious about their suit, they take good care of it. They clean it. If you just go for like a day event, like an inside day event, because most of it's like inside for the day, then you usually don't have to wash it. You can usually be fine, because you're only going to wear it for like an hour, maybe two. So in that case, you can like spot clean if you have to, or anything like super duper minor. But usually you just would get home and hang it back up, brush it before you go out again.
Do you know what a tourist is when like somebody's looking in on a community? Do you know what that phrase means? What would you say to like a tourist of the furry community? What's one thing that you would tell them to somebody just looking in and and saying, what is going on over there?
Talk to people, ask questions, go as far out into the community as you want. I mentioned earlier that I went to a convention in December, and I actually was lucky. So my parents are very accepting of who I am. And I invited them to take a day pass at the second largest furry convention in the country in Chicago at MFF. And they were like, sure, we'll do that. And they actually are like, they're super extroverted. They're awesome. I love them both to pieces. They both got sweaters that said free mom hugs. Because I have two mothers, for the record. And they were a huge hit they were walking around, people would like tap on their back, like people in full suit, people in partials, people without even a suit at all, tap on their back. Oh, can I get a hug? Can I get a hug? Yeah, of course, of course. And seeing them do that as people who were definitely tourists to the community was awesome. But you know, the people at FurCons are like just so accepting. They're such nice people. Talk to them, ask them questions. You want to get a picture of somebody in a suit? Ask them to take a picture. They will have like a cool pose they'll do. Everybody has one. Every furry has their signature pose. But you know, don't be afraid to get in there and you know ask for hugs, ask for pictures, ask for just questions about like what is this? What's this aspect of it like? What's that aspect of it like? And you know they'll answer. They're all like you know it's a super welcoming community. It's very easy to get into.
I think that's something that people don't do enough. They don't ask questions to people in different communities. They sort of just look in and they go, well, I don't agree with this, so I'm going to make judgments. You know,
oh, for sure.
We see that in the VTuber community all the time. We see that and I think we're all guilty of it to a degree, too. I've looked in a lot of communities that I don't understand, and I've said, well, that's weird. Or the other day where I was, like, drowsy from my meds, I had like stumbled across a video recommended to me about a train accident that like a woman was hit by a train when crossing, and one thing I was like totally confused about is it was like a 7-8 minute video, and only like 2 minutes of it were spent talking about the actual accident. Most of it was the guy talking about the train and the train's history. And it didn't occur to me until, like, later that day when I'm at work and I'm actually stocking magazines, and I'm stocking magazines about, like, railroading, that's like, oh, that's because this is a railfan community thing. You know, they like trains. They like the train's history. So, you know, tourism is, like, a huge problem. And I think it's just from a lot of people looking at things on the surface and not taking the time to think, well, this is a different community than I'm used to, you know, and not thinking about the intricacies of it.
Yeah, and it can be really interesting to like learn more about those like different communities you aren't a part of.
I don't know, I haven't really encountered it personally in the community, but it does happen a lot. People, I'm sure you've heard the one where it's like, oh, these VTuber fans, you know that they're probably like 40-year-old men pretending to be a woman. And it's like, sir, I don't think you know how voice changers work.
Yeah, there's always going to be, like, weird stereotypes with different groups. I don't know why. People are always, like, just wanting to be aggressive towards others. Yeah, it's definitely something. I'm lucky in that I've never experienced that firsthand in, like, the VTubing community or really in the furry community either. I do think part of that's because, like, I haven't really been in it for that long. I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
Why do you think there's a lot of aggression just going on in general? I want to hear your opinions, because a lot of people are saying that the world has kind of just gotten a lot angrier over the past years, even before Trumpism sort of took its place. You know, you can point back to like in a lot of incidents that have been happening for years. I want to know your opinion, whether you think this is true or not, and what are your thoughts?
That's a big question. Because it's difficult, right? Because the world has never been like a more accepting place than it is now. It's just kind of the truth, right? Legalized gay marriage was just finally passed in Thailand, like literally this week. There's so many good, progressive, friendly, and awesome stuff that happens all over the world, every day, all the time. People are growing up in societies where violence is at like an all-time low. People are generally living fairly decent lives and are able to do like. When I say people here, I'm talking about like in the United States, right? Because that's where I'm from. And it's difficult sometimes to remember that and to put that into the correct perspective, because there is money to be made in telling people that the world is ending. And because of that, that's definitely something you hear a lot. It's how negative news stories always sell better than positive. And because of that, people they look at this and they're like, oh, this is terrible. Everything is terrible. And they don't realize that had they been born 200 years ago, they'd be living off of like the 3 vegetables they could grow in their yard or however long or whatever. So it's hard to say exactly why things really feel so much worse than they have now. With that being said, obviously there are a lot of really big issues happening now that were not facing the world, even the world of a decade ago. And there's a lot of failure of people in positions of power to properly handle those things and to move at a pace that would actually keep up with what's happening. But I do think part of it as well is this expectation of advancing technology, making lives better, right? Like, is life better now that we have awesome computers that can play old school RuneScape and like Helldivers and like all these like fun games that you can literally I can sit down and before I joined here, I was talking to Matham, who's across the ocean, and I was talking to another one of my friends who also lives like in Sweden. That wasn't possible 100 years ago. There's so many good things that it's difficult though to see them sometimes through the weeds, and it's difficult to really point and say, this is why this is happening. This is why things feel worse, and this is why some things are worse. But I think part of it is there is, over the last 60, 70 years, been absolutely insane advancements in technology. We've gone from like not having like a complex electronics to having like cathode tube TVs to having like straight up microprocessors to landing on the moon to having like thousands of satellites. It's been accelerating, but that's not gonna happen forever. And we're kind of at a moment now where in all likelihood we've kind of hit like a milestone, and it's gonna probably stay how it is for a while, and then from there it'll get better again. But for a while it's probably gonna be like kind of how it is. Now, I will also say that there's a lot of stress in the world. There's probably more stress now than there has been for a lot of other times, because the things that we have to really stress about now are like, they're not something you can reach out and touch. Somebody used to be afraid of the neighboring kingdom coming over and taking them over and pillaging and defeating their king and blah, 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 blah. But now we have the fear of like the current political climate. We have the fear of global warming. We have the fear of AI taking our jobs. We have the fear of like all of these things that are on a different level metaphysically than what we're used to. And I think that combined with the fact that we have more access to seeing all of that through news sites, the internet, various forms of content, short form, long form, etc. It's just brain broken a lot of people. And I'm not sure when that's going to get better. I think that that's one of those things that we've been failed on as like a society. Like when TV was first becoming really popular, like if you just look at like children's TV, it was super highly regulated. You had to have like very high standards to get on TV. Same thing for radio. When radio was first coming out, there was like whole radio channels that were straight up like killed by the federal government because they were like, we don't want this. This is against what we want. There's only a certain number of channels, and we're not going to give you a voice. And it was really like, if it happened today, it'd be like almost straight up like anti-free speech, because it was anti-free speech. But that's not a bad thing. It's what the technology was at the time, and it's how we ended up moving forward. But now, that's different. Everybody with a smartphone has the computer in their pocket, can access all the wonders and amazement and awesome tools, but it also gives them access to the worry, the stress, the vitriol, the hatred. And unfortunately, I think it's just kind of human nature in a lot of ways to gravitate towards that negativity.
I think that's very good insight. I agree with you. I think that it's easier to both be negative but there's a lot of positives too. Like you said, connecting with people, but it's also just as easy to go and be negative and spread negativity. So before we close out today's episode, I'm going to introduce my first special segment, which I'm going to call the Quickfire Rex. I want you to recommend to me one other VTuber, one other creator that you like, one book that you like, one show that you like, and one movie that you like. Could be from any point in time. You don't have to have watched it recently. I want you to give me those 4 recommendations, all of them, and after each recommendation, why we should watch it or read it or whatever in 1 to 2 sentences. So, first off, what's a creator you recommend?
I absolutely love Northern Lion. He's who I watch every night. I keep up with his content. I think he's insightful. I think he's funny. He's been often called like your favorite streamer's streamer, and I think that's pretty apt for him. He definitely has like dad humor, so you got to be into that. But that's an easy recommend. I've been watching him since like high school for decades.
All right. So, what is a book you recommend?
This one's a bit harder. I will say, I sincerely enjoyed the Bartimaeus trilogy. It's a book series about this like aspiring summoner who summons this demon, who ends up like really being a chill guy, right? It's a lot of fun. It's more for younger adults. I read it a while ago, but it's definitely something that like sticks with me as a fun and creative book series for. Yeah, it's a good time.
What is a movie you recommend?
I actually didn't watch a lot of movies growing up, and recently I've been changing that and going back and watching a bunch of movies with my friends in our little Discord server. Definitely the most recent, like, super awesome movie I watched was Alien Romulus. My parents were, like, staunchly anti-horror, so going back and we've watched, like, the whole Alien series, and it was a lot of fun. And Romulus is great. I will say, if you're looking for, like, a current movie, Wild Robot is incredible. Definitely worth seeing.
And then finally, what is a show you recommend? Could be anime, could be non-anime, could be just as long as it's episodic.
I don't watch too many shows. I did watch a lot of anime when I was in trade school, and definitely my favorite anime of all time is Odd Taxi. It is been compared to like Tarantino films as far as the writing goes. It's definitely worth a watch, and it's short. Cannot recommend that enough. I like short. I want a show that ends. It is, I think, 1 season and 1 movie, which is the perfect length for what an anime should be.
I appreciate all your time today. Is there anything you would like to plug before we depart?
I'll just plug my stream real quick again. My name is Pippindip, Pippindip. I stream on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then occasionally I'll also stream on the weekends, but that's usually kind of a special thing. If you go to conventions, hit me up, let me know. The con schedule for this year is A&E, Canference, for POC, and probably STL FC. So we'll see on that one. I think it was called Gateway for Con, so we'll see. But yeah, so if you want to, anybody who's planning on going to those, let me know, and we can communicate about it over Blue Sky, which I also have.
I hope you all enjoyed this new series that I'll be calling Real Talk with River. I'm hoping to put out at least 2 episodes a month. We'll have to see. But if you like this, give me a like, subscribe, turn those notifs on, and remember to be nice and be kind to one another.